Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, apologies. There might be a few issues with the sound quality, but please stick with it. This was a really interesting and well, I'm going to say heartwarming, but it was a real shock at times as to what can happen if we're not all careful, but also, you know, what people are doing to help others, even when their own situation is in a terrible, terrible state. So please bear with it, and hopefully the technical guys will clean it up as best as possible. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues and listeners, we've got a very special show today, and it's with somebody who's been on before, and it's very, very relevant now, and it's an absolute pleasure to have Radhika Batra back on board. And Radhika is the founder and president of Every Infant Matters, and she's also listed as one of Forbes 30 under 30 honorary superstars, I will have to say, Radhika, because congratulations to you there. So firstly, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's a pleasure to be back, and it's so lovely to see you again.
Likewise. Now, Radhika, just in case anybody that's listening at the moment didn't see you before, can you just explain firstly who you are and what you actually do and how you came to kick off Every Infant Matters?
Hi, so my name is Dr. Radhika Batra, and I am a pediatrician in New Delhi. I started off with a nonprofit which is called Every Infant Matters back in 2017. And the reason why I started this was because when I was doing my residency in pediatrics, I saw a lot of inequalities in the healthcare space, and a lot of children used to die or become irreversibly blind or disabled for reasons that could well have been prevented with simple, timely, cost-effective interventions. So that, it just hit me on a very personal level. And I just wanted to make sure that there is ubiquitous access to healthcare for all, and all children receive an equal opportunity to good health, irrespective of their ability to pay. And I don't want any child to die for lack of resources, lack of medicines, unawareness of their parents, or not having money to pay for treatment. Just for these reasons, most of childhood deaths in my country were happening for this reason. And when I researched about other underdeveloped and developing countries, I found that it's pretty much the same in, throughout Africa, in India, in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, in the Dominican Republic. There's a lot of, there's gross inequality in the healthcare space. And that's what is our, that's what is the ideology behind starting Every Infant Matters, that we want to combat this travesty of justice and make sure that every child has an equal right to stay alive and stay healthy. Yeah. So that's what Every Infant Matters is about. And we started 4 years ago. We are across 4 countries and 3 continents now. So we've done a fair amount of work. I would say we've prevented 57,000 children from going blind. We've given prenatal vitamins and improved maternal health for almost 40,000 pregnant women. And we've dewormed around 50,000-60,000 children as well. So we've done a great amount of work. And of course, in the last 1 year, our focus has shifted from child and maternal health to COVID relief because of the situation in my country and the situation in Africa as well.
Yeah, well, firstly, and knowing your mother as well, Shelly, I mean, when I met you, two formidable forces there, and coming together, you're a complete package, the pair of you. And firstly, well done for what you've done. Well done for all the things that you're doing, and I follow your activities all the time, and I'm never. Well, I just can't believe what the two of you are doing and how you're doing it together. So it's fantastic. Now, obviously, India has been in the headlines a huge amount now. So it's, I don't know what is it now? It's 30 odd days, just over a month since it hit its peak, and thank God it's starting to come down now. But it was a terrible time. So do you want to just explain a little bit? Obviously, I know what happened to your grandfather and what you and your mum went through, and you all contracted COVID. But can you just tell us what it was actually like from your perspective, and what you also started to do whilst you were going through the infection and the recovery period?
Yeah, so you rightly said it started around, I would say, 10th or 11th of April. That was when we started seeing the news that the cases are really peaking. There are no beds available anymore. And then suddenly, being a doctor, I used to get a lot of calls from my friends and extended family that, our some relative is sick. Can you please arrange this medicine for us? Can you please arrange a hospital bed for us? Can you please arrange an oxygen cylinder for us? And when you're helping others, and when you're just looking at the news, you don't think that it's going to come and hit you. You just think that it's there on the television. It's there, but it's not there in your house. It's not there, for yourself. And then the inevitable happened. I think it was my grandfather who got a fever first, and of course my grandmother, who was staying in his close proximity, also tested positive. And they were, my grandfather was 93 years old. My grandmother is around 87. So they fell in the extremely high risk category. So of course, we had to get them, common sense prevailed that we have to get them admitted at the earliest before things go downhill. So that's, as soon as they tested positive, we started scrambling around for hospital beds. And I'd like to just, highlight here that I'm a doctor. I come from a privileged background. My entire family is full of doctors. And even for a family like ours, it took all our energy. It took a lot of running around from pillar to post, trying to get hospital beds for two aged people who needed it, who genuinely needed it.
Yeah.
Right. And it just took a lot of energy. And, my mother is the head of department at a very big COVID hospital. Even for her, it wasn't possible to pull any strings to get beds. Finally, what happened was that the government allocated an X amount of extra beds given the crisis. And when that new ward opened up, we managed to get two beds together for my grandparents over there. And because the ward was so new, it wasn't well stocked up, right? There were no supplies. There was, the ratio of the number of patients to the number of staff, be it the nursing staff or be it the orderlies or be it the doctors, was grossly disproportionate. So there was, say, one nursing staff for almost 30, 40 patients. So, so the care which they were getting was not, not adequate at all. And that's not the nurse's fault. I mean, if she has to attend to 20, 30 other patients, she's not going to be able to give, adequate attention to my grandparents, however important and however VIP they may be in the hospital, right? So we realized slowly that, like my grandfather developed fever, but he did not get the fever medication for almost 4 hours. Then we realized that, this is not going to work. One of us has to stay there and take care of them, or else they are not going to, be in a good shape. Because so luckily, like I said, we're all doctors. So we took turns, like mom and I. My mom, she stayed for the initial few days. And, my mom being a careless person, she was like, she was all about, she wanted to have tea with her mother, and she wanted to lower her mask for breathing because she couldn't breathe in the COVID ward of all the, ridiculous things in the world. So, of course, inevitably, she caught it as well.
Yeah.
Because she was taking care of her parents. And through her, I caught it. So the four of us, my grandparents, my mother, and I, all four of us had a fever. My grandfather, of course, had a pneumonia. Luckily, the other three of us didn't get it that bad. So mom and I, of course, were fully vaccinated. So I think that conferred protection against the severe disease. But we did have a very bad fever. We had to take steroids. We had lung involvement. Our CT scans did show changes with all four of us. So it was quite bad.
And
that's how.
Sorry, Radhika, you said there that you were both vaccinated. You had both the vaccinations, both of you.
Both the shots, yeah.
And you still had it that bad afterwards.
Yeah. So in fact, I had even got so in India, you can get your antibody titer checked. So I had even got my antibody titer checked 2 weeks after the second dose of the vaccine. And I had a significantly high titer of around 58 to 60, which is like anything above 20 is supposed to be good. And I had 3 times that amount. And even then I contracted this infection because what they're saying is that this strain, I think it's B161, something like that. I'm not sure of the exact technical name of the strain, but this particular strain is something which people are still catching despite being fully vaccinated. The only benefit is that you're not getting a very bad form of it if you are vaccinated. Of course, there have been outliers. A number of doctors I know have died after getting both the shots as well. So, it's a very precarious situation. We don't know whether or doesn't live. Nobody knows. There are 30-year-olds who have died. Just today in my ICU, a 30-year-old male died. 18-year-old is very sick. Fully vaccinated doctors are on the ventilator. One of them died. A very famous cardiologist who was fully vaccinated died. It's such a scary situation that I cannot tell you. You're constantly scared for your loved ones. You don't know what the next wave is going to bring. Of course, like current wave is sort of dying down, I would say. But then again, the crisis is not abating. It's just evolving, because I don't know whether you've read about this black fungus situation we have in India now. Have you read about that?
No.
No. Okay, so I'll just tell you. So what is happening with COVID patients is that when they're recovering from the pneumonia, they are getting some swelling on their face or around their eyes or their nose. And that swelling is because of a fungal infection called mucormycosis, which is called, in layman's terms, it's called a black fungus. And that causes, it causes a very bad fungal infection, which is almost impossible to treat. And it often requires mutilating surgeries in which a part of your face has to be removed or your eye has to be removed. It's just horrifying. And that crisis is actually, it's just going from bad to worse, because they say that it's happened, that fungus it's become an epidemic in India, and it's becoming that it's come from the sources of industrial oxygen, which was used in place of medical oxygen when there was a massive crisis and there was no medical oxygen available. So that's how this fungus originated, and now it's turned into a full-blown epidemic. In Delhi alone, there are, yeah.
Sorry. So as a result of the limited medical oxygen, they decided to supplement the stock with industrial oxygen.
Right.
Okay, and have they proven that's the cause of the
no, so these are just speculations. People are just coming up with these theories. Some are saying that it's the prolonged use of steroids which is causing an immunocompromised state, and of course with diabetics, it's an even bigger problem, with the steroids causing a further increase in the sugar levels, and that's setting off a vicious cycle of some sort, which causes a person's immunity to be so bad that they're predisposed to the fungus. So there are a number of causes for this problem, but the point is that the crisis is not going down; it's just evolving into another crisis altogether.
Yeah.
So
sorry, have you seen and witnessed worst case of the fungus?
Personally, touch wood, no, nobody around me, but I have been, I'll come to how I've been helping in the pandemic, and through those channels, I've had so many calls for this antifungal medicine. It's called liposomal amphotericin B, right? And because pre-pandemic and before this crisis, it was not a medicine that was used very often. Of course, it was used for fungal infections, but the demand supply is grossly, it's not adequate. The number of doses that are there in the country at the moment are grossly inadequate, and there's a massive crisis of liposomal amphotericin B at the moment. So the crisis has evolved from the crisis being for remdesivir and tocilizumab. Those were the drugs that they're using for COVID. Yeah, those were the SOS calls back around the 10th of April. And now they have just, died down, and the crisis calls are now more for amphotericin B and for ECMO beds. ECMO is extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, which is an advanced form of ventilation for patients where even the ventilators have failed. So, it's just bad even now. So even though the number of cases have grossly come down in Delhi, back around the peak, we had 30,000 new cases a day. Now we have 500. So that is slightly, that's a small ray of sunshine in the dark tunnel, but at the same time, it's still very scary.
It is. I mean, it's incredible. Now,
Yeah.
now, obviously, over here in the UK this week, we've got the G7 meeting, and people are already talking about, health ministers getting together and what can they do, and that saying that everybody says we're all safe only when everyone's safe is very, very, very true. So some of the things that are being addressed now in the press is, countries with their foreign aid, and some of them having to reduce some of the foreign aid, contributions and commitments because of the economic crisis that they've got in their own countries. And now there's a bit of a dilemma where people are balancing, whether something is right or whether it's wrong. Now, something that I have to bring up, but I'm not asking you to comment on, because obviously as a medical practitioner, your aim is to help people no matter what the reason. But some of the things that are being said now is that if people, through a decision or a position that they weren't able to plan or equip themselves or prepare themselves effectively at the front end, if they then do things that accentuate the problems, surely there should be some sort of guidelines or rules or code of conduct that somebody would have to do to then allow that extra aid or support to be more effective. So, there's nothing worse than seeing families, upset and loved ones being lost. It doesn't matter where you come from. That's something that every human being can relate to, and it's a terrible situation. But then when they see, religious rallies and sporting events and political rallies and stuff, and it's like, why on earth are those activities being allowed when we know what the repercussions will be? And then when the repercussions are magnified, it puts everybody in a worse position, and we have to then try and, go looking for solutions. It seems to be a bit of a paradox, Radhika. And, I think personally, this is just my personal opinion, that moving forward, the most important thing is what you said earlier. No child should go without a roof over their head. No child should go without a bed to sleep in. No child should go without education. No child should go without equal rights, no matter whatever their denomination or gender, whatever it is. Okay. And every single person should have access to good basic healthcare, irrespective of all those other influencing factors that we all know come about. Now, if that's the way people are going to care more as a result of this pandemic, then good on everybody in the world. But it means that other parties are going to have to be a little bit more responsible, a lot more transparent, and a little bit more humane themselves. Otherwise, you're always going to have this conflict. And when you see that, there wasn't enough medical oxygen, had to use industrial oxygen, or this last week, we've seen terrible things on the news whereby the authorities are parading people who were mis-selling drugs, who were mis-selling oxygen, and it was costing lives, Radhika. Now, for me, if that was me and I had the chance to do something, and I know Salem's in the background saying, don't bang the desk, don't do anything, don't show, I would absolutely, do you know what I mean? I couldn't say what I would do to people who do that to others when they're needy. So the thing that you've done with Every Infant Matters, you and your mum and everything else that you're doing, and also the people that are supporting you, everybody who's doing good now needs some support from the authorities. And again, I don't mean to be, but you see some of these space programs and weaponry and all these things that countries are getting involved in instead of the basics. And I just think if people want support from outside, they should be showing that they're able to deliver the basics first. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and I completely agree. I feel that priorities are very, very misplaced, specifically when it comes to countries like mine. There's no denying it. And, as a doctor, as a healthcare professional, as a philanthropist, the only thing that I can do in my capacity is to help those that are the worst affected.
Yeah.
And that is what we have been doing. So let me tell you about the interesting turn of events which led to the formation of something that I call as the COVID task force of Every Infant Matters. So like I mentioned, I was scrambling around for hospital beds, And the next bomb which dropped was that there was no remdesivir available. So we had to scramble around. It took days. It took, me sending and then again, I'm going to reiterate that I come from a privileged background. It took me sending my driver, to a city which was 100 kilometers away to fetch 4 doses from there, 6 doses from another city which was, another 100 kilometers away. It was just, it was just crazy. And don't even let's not even get into how much money went into procuring all of this. But it's just what you do for family. And then I just had one thought. I have these luxuries, but what's happening to the common man? They are just being left to die. They're just, not getting any hospital bed. They're not getting any medication. They can't do anything. They're extremely helpless and extremely vulnerable. And they are the ones who are the worst affected. So I just got together with a bunch of my friends, and I would say who had the same concept of wanting to help others, the same ideology, and we made a WhatsApp group of I think 6 people for starters, and we were just picking up SOS calls from Twitter, from the internet, from our circles, and assisting them in every way possible by providing them with verified leads of the internet, and verifying them personally before giving it to the patients, because we were mindful of the fact that the patient's family is already very stressed. We can't be making 100 phone calls to procure 1 cylinder of oxygen. So we were just making sure that we're giving them verified leads. Slowly, this movement just grew, and more and more people, basically the youth of the country, was very, very keen to help out. And I mean, the resilience, the grit, the determination was just incredible. It grew from 6 members to a 165 member volunteer group, which was active 24/7. There have been nights when 5 of us have been awake till 6 a.m. in the morning, assisting a lady who's in her 60s with her son who's in the 40s. Both have COVID. They're outside a hospital. They're being denied admission because there's no bed available. And we're, frantically calling up the nearby hospitals. She has no money. So, we are trying to book a cab for her from us sitting in our homes. It's just, we're just trying to help them whatever way possible. There have been times, the calls have ranged from oxygen and medicines to help us arrange for cremation, help us, take care of, help us get our deceased, help us, talk to the hospital authorities to release our deceased so that we can cremate them, and help us raise funds for the cremation because we don't have the money to sponsor the cremation. The calls have ranged from these aspects. They have ranged from funding to medicines to cremations to from NRIs stuck in UK, in Dubai, in the Philippines, not being able to come here, and they have elderly parents here who are all alone, who have contracted COVID, and there's nobody to help them.
Yeah, Radhika, I just want to interrupt you there and just to put you at ease. The background noise, I know that you're calling us from home, and it's you've got a big family there, so don't worry about that. That's all part of life, and it's great that you've joined us. So please, there's no problems there whatsoever. Now, you said that you've got some 165 volunteers, and you've been doing that now since you were actually still recovering, and you were in isolation.
Yeah.
Now, what gives you, I've got to ask you now, what gives you and your mother, because I've also watched, the amount of posts that she puts up, and she is do you know what I mean? She's like, I think if she was playing American football, she'd be a running back. Do you know what I mean? She runs through everything.
Yeah, she's a crusader.
Oh my goodness me. But what gives you the, how do you maintain that engagement and enthusiasm to do good for others, and that energy, the pair of you?
I think, this altruistic thought is what got us through the personal crisis that we were going through, because it was such a stressful time, because we, at the back of our mind, we knew that my grandfather's not recovering. He's just worsening day by day. His age is not on his side. His lungs are just going from bad to worse. The oxygen requirement is going on increasing. And at the same time, we were constantly, helping others through the crisis of which was people who were not related to us, who we didn't know, random strangers who we didn't know at all. So we were helping those strangers at the same time. So I think it really helped us, somewhere to not completely lose our minds, with respect to what was happening to our own family. So that was one reason. And of course, somewhere my grandfather would have wanted us to help everybody else as much as possible. He was a very, very noble soul. He believed in seva. Seva is a Hindi word for service to humanity. So he believed in the concept of seva, and he would have really wanted us to help as much as we could. And in fact, interestingly, in his last days, of course, he was being, extremely ill. He was in the ICU. And in his last days, when we noticed that he wasn't getting better, we decided to surrender his ICU bed to someone who would have a
Yes.
more fighting chance, because the beds were really limited. There were only around, 10 to 15 ICU beds available in the entire hospital. And in the entire city, an ICU bed was, I would say it was like a black diamond. It was that rare to get, and there were patients dying for lack of ICU. And then we just, I just told my mother, I said, we're not making use of any of the ICU facilities. We have decided against ventilation. We have decided against, we've almost signed the DNR. So why should we take away this opportunity of saving another person, specifically because my grandfather was an organ donor and his organs couldn't be donated because of him being COVID positive. Yeah. So in this way, we wanted to channelize that concept of organ donation by donating the ICU bed to someone who would have a fighting chance to make it. So ultimately, that ICU bed went to a 26-year-old naval officer who was serving the country. So I'm not sure. I couldn't follow up and make sure whether he made it or not. But given his age, I think he had a pretty good chance. So let's hope he made it. And so we shifted him out from the ICU and we got him to a normal room. And he passed surrounded by loved ones. Just loved ones. I mean, his wife, my grandmother, and my mother, both of whom were also COVID positive, so they could be there. The rest of the family, of course, could not be there. I was there for a while. I was also COVID positive. So it was just a very, very traumatic time for our entire family. And helping others is what got us through it. It's still, till date, the task force is working 24/7. And like I said, the nature of the SOS calls has changed from remdesivir to amphotericin B, from ventilators to ECMO, from asking us for help for cremation to asking us for funding for prolonged ICU treatment. So the nature of the calls changed, but there are still a significant number of SOS calls per day.
Yeah, so, it's incredible. Yeah. But even though you look at it from both you and your mum being doctors, and you probably look at it from a different perspective to Joe or Jane Public, and but still the fact that you gave up a bed that was being occupied by one of your loved ones to help somebody else because you felt there was no. I mean, that's an exceptional thing to do. So again, it's absolutely brilliant what you're doing. Now, as far as the vaccinations are concerned, and we spoke earlier about the fact that you had both vaccinations, but you still got it again. I mean, the issue is that the more people that get the vaccines, the less chance it has to keep moving and passing and becoming a variant of concern. But I read, and I'm not saying this is an accurate number, but I think there's approximately 1.5 or 1.2 billion doses that have already been given to people in the world, and there's another 1.5 surplus doses that are available. So whether it's COVAX or whoever, whatever organisations are involved, to get those surplus doses is so important, and for people to do it in a really good and controlled fashion. And the reason I say controlled is because we've seen that if it's not in a controlled fashion, things can happen that are not in the best interest of everybody else. So that 1.5 billion would make a big dent. I mean, if you add that to the ones that have got it, we're nearly half the global population being done, which would make a huge difference.
Yeah. So I think, Chris, vaccines are, our only fighting chance against this pandemic.
Yeah.
And the problem with vaccines, I personally, of course, the number of doses is a problem, but a bigger problem is the vaccine hesitancy. And this vaccine hesitancy is not just a new thing with the pandemic. It's been there since a long time with other diseases as well. And it has been a leading cause of under 5 mortality in underdeveloped, and even in some parts of developed countries, there's a lot of vaccine hesitancy. So the problem, let me talk about India in particular. The problem lies in generations of people believing that vaccines are bad for their child, or vaccination in general is a concept which is harmful rather than beneficial. So, if they were not vaccinating their children against measles and rubella, a fat chance they're going to accept a vaccine which is new and which is just come out. So which is not even gone through that test of time. So that this vaccine hesitancy, specifically in rural areas, in tribal areas, in communities which are not very well educated and very well aware, it is a problem. It's a very big problem. And of course, in India, there's no shortage of rumor mongers and people saying that it's against our religion and it's against our cultural beliefs to be vaccinated. The vaccine. The funniest thing I heard was that the vaccine can make people impotent or sterile. Or all sorts of nonsensical conspiracy theories going on, and people are putting a political angle to it, that if my party I support is not going to create the vaccine, I'm not going to take. No shortage of morons in the world, I would say. I mean, no offense to anybody listening, but that's the way things are, and it's unfortunate because truly speaking, looking at the science of the virus, looking at everything we know about the virus, still now it is the only fighting chance you have to fight against it.
But do you not, and I totally agree with you, Radhika. I think this, vaccine hesitancy is a terrible thing. And, but do you not think now this is the time where, unlike the excellent work that you and your mother are doing, politicians, celebrities, heads of companies, this is where they need to step forward now and show that they're taking the vaccines.
Of course,
we need leaders.
To,
yeah, we need leaders of people and leaders of the community to be doing it collectively and together. And this is where I'm saying, these are some of the basic rules that should be in place, so that if people start to take the initiative themselves and put the effort in, then everybody really, they really want to support it.
Yeah, no, that is very true.
And like you're a person who's gone through a huge amount of education and training and exams, and you rely on data, and the data suggests, even now in the UK, which is, touch wood, thank God, in a pretty good situation, but where the variant of concern is prominent, and where people are going into the hospitals, the majority of the people that are going in are people that have not had the vaccination.
Yeah.
And so it's proving. But even those that, but there's less people dying now than there was at the peak of the second wave. So, that in itself shows that you've got a much better or a fighting chance if you've had the vaccine than if you haven't.
You've had the vaccine.
And it's also protecting others, because it's also suggesting that if you get it and you have lesser repercussions as a result of getting it, that there's a chance that it's also going to be harder for you to spread it if you've had both the vaccines.
Yeah, that is very true. And like I said, it's the best shot we have at getting anything close to the end of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Of course, a third wave is inevitable. We're already looking to prepare for the third wave in India. I'm not sure how devastating that's going to be, but the second wave was just a wave of terror throughout the country. And I think the humanitarian crisis that accompanied it made everything a lot worse.
Yeah.
A lot of people died just, at home, struggling, not able to get a bed. Just ordinarily, if things weren't that bad, hospital bed wise, we would have had a lot less deaths. There have been instances where people have not had the money to bury and bury their dead with dignity, and they've just had to just leave the bodies in the river. There were a bunch of bodies that washed up across the shore of the river Ganges. A number of bodies washed up, and it was said that these were just COVID bodies, and people didn't, because the money was exhausted on the oxygen and on the medical supplies. There was no money to cremate, and they were just thrown into the river.
And that adds to
horrifying. It's just horrifying.
It's terrible. And
I still remember it.
Sorry, and that also scares people more, because you've seen the questions like, can you catch it from contaminated water? Can you catch it from touching, like you said, the dead bodies that got washed up? All these questions that are adding then to the panic around it.
So, Chris, there's no definite answer to any of these questions, I believe. And I also think that the only way to make sure that you keep yourself alive, and that's the message I'd like to give to all of the listeners, is to prevent it from happening in the first place. You just have to mask up as much as possible and maintain, of course, social distancing, avoid large gatherings, avoid weddings. And, like India had a huge number of weddings, which contributed to the, and what big fat Indian weddings are like. So it just contributed to the spread massively. As late as 12th or 13th of April, when the pandemic had already peaked, weddings were going on. So, it didn't help anybody. It didn't help anybody. And of course, as much as I believe that weddings are important, I don't think it was worth it.
Yeah.
And these mass gatherings should be avoided at all costs. You cannot be careless with your mask. Mask is gloves are not that important. The sanitizer is not that important. The mask is what is the real MVP in this situation. It is what is going to save you.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I hope that when people, get these reductions in the restrictions, that they should still be wearing them as much as possible. And the basics of, I just think it's, and also, I know it's nice to have a cuddle and everybody does the cheek to cheek and stuff, but people should try and avoid that,
Yeah. So if you look at the history, from the history point of view, if you look at the history of the Spanish flu, I think after the third wave, it died down.
Yeah.
And it only died down after wiping out 10 to 15% of the world's population. That's I watched a documentary on the Spanish flu, and that's what it said. So I think we have a similar hope with COVID-19, that maybe after the third wave and 2 to 3 years of causing all sorts of devastating consequences, it passes and leaves us alone, and life can get back to as we knew it. Maybe. Just fingers crossed.
Please God. Now, Radhika, lots of parties, especially within the industry I'm in, there's been exceptional support from the carriers with flying medication, PPE, flying equipment. They've done an absolutely amazing job, and
phenomenal job.
Yeah, and some individuals as well. I cannot think highly enough of all of those people. But from your position now with Every Infant Matters and the COVID task force and everything, what would you like to see happen now, or what is it that you need now to help things get better?
I think, given the current situation in the country, the situation is such that it's dying down a little in the major cities, but in the rural areas and in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, which are not all that well connected, it's just increasing in the interiors of the country. So what's happening is that these are the places who do not have health infrastructure, who have maybe, say, one health center for like a couple of thousand people with no facilities for COVID admissions, no facilities for oxygen supplies, nothing. So what we're doing now is we're setting up COVID care centers in these remote areas. And for those places, we need oxygen. And by oxygen, I mean, easiest way to give oxygen to mild to moderate cases is through an oxygen concentrator. So an oxygen concentrator is basically a device which concentrates the atmospheric oxygen. So it's a square shaped. It's pretty huge, and it has a mask attached. It has nasal prongs attached, and it concentrates the atmospheric oxygen so that the patient gets oxygen at 5 to 10. Maximum it can give is around 7 liters per minute. So this is the easiest way of helping out for those who want to help, is by funding oxygen concentrators and helping us, make sure that they are delivered to the needy people, to the places who need them the most, the people who need them the most. Now, as opposed to an oxygen cylinder, which needs continuous refilling, and that is again a very big logistical nightmare to get the oxygen cylinders refilled. Because I remember when so there was an oxygen outage in New Delhi, in the hospital where my grandfather was admitted. And that was the day he started to deteriorate. That was the day 12 patients died because of lack of oxygen in the hospital. And that was the day he started to deteriorate. We were scrambling around because the oxygen pressure in the hospital dropped. So we had our own cylinder. Luckily, we were prepared for such a situation because, again, like I said, we're all doctors. We knew that this might happen. So we were prepared with the cylinder. The cylinder finished and we had to get a new cylinder, then get it refilled. And I remember my cousin brother had to stand in a line for 8 hours to get the oxygen cylinder refilled. So, all these logistical nightmares are something that we really want to avoid going further. And I think an oxygen concentrator is an excellent way to deliver oxygen, at least to mild and moderate cases. Severe cases, of course, would need a higher flow of oxygen, which a concentrator may not be able to provide. But we can just try to help whoever we can by way of setting up centers with concentrators, with basic medical supplies, with basic PPE for the volunteers or the health workers there. So these are all needs of the hour: concentrators, PPE. I think vaccine camps also are a very good idea for us to be doing, which we've already done. We've done 3 vaccine camps and we vaccinated around 3,000 people. So these are all, these are the burning needs at the moment. And we have to prepare for the 3rd wave. We can't let this happen again.
No, exactly. Too many lessons learned and too many people affected. Right. So that's what you're focusing on. So obviously the vaccination camps, I think, are brilliant. The remote support areas are fantastic. Partnerships with private hospitals is another thing that's happening. So if anybody's able to help you, or if anybody's got any ideas, or anybody wants to contact you, how should they do that and where?
They can reach out on email and they can connect with me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, wherever they like. And maybe we can just leave my email in the description of the podcast. Is that a good idea?
Yes, it is. We'll put, if you're okay with that, anything that you've got that's available, we'll put on the post surrounding the podcast. Well, look, Radhika, it's a pleasure, and I think you know what my personal thoughts are, and I think you and your mum, a couple of lovely characters. I've enjoyed every time we've met and when we've been at conferences and things. You're a couple of real characters, but you're also doing so much for so many with so little, and I applaud you. I think it's an absolute incredible effort that you're both making, and a wonderful one at that. So
thank you so much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Please God, things will be better if
hoping they get better.
All right. Good luck to you all.
Thank you so much,
and so very sorry about your granddad.
Thank you.